Thank you for listening to this worship podcast of St. Andrew Lutheran Church. I am Peter Johnson, Interim Senior Pastor. We hope this recording provides you with a moment of God's grace wherever this finds you. Know that you're welcome to join us in person for worship in Eden Prairie on Sunday mornings at 9 or 10:30. And also know that any contribution you make will bolster St. Andrew's ministry and outreach, including our podcasting directly to you. You can do so online. Welcome and God's blessings to you.
Our gospel comes from Luke. But on the first day of the week, at early dawn, they came to the tomb, taking the spices that they had prepared. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb. But when they went in, they did not find the body. While they were perplexed about this, suddenly two men in dazzling clothes stood beside them. The women were terrified and bowed their faces to the ground, but the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, but has been risen. Remember how he told you while he was still in Galilee that the Son of Man must be handed over to sinners and be crucified, and on the third day rise again." Then they remembered his words, and returning from the tomb, they told all this to the 11 and to all the rest. Now it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the other women with them who told this to the apostles. But these words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them. But Peter got up and ran to the tomb, stooping and looking in, and he saw the linen clothes by themselves, and then he went home amazed at what had happened. The word of the Lord. You may be seated.
Happy Easter. Let's do it the way we opened up the service. He is risen. He is risen indeed. One more time. He is risen. He is risen indeed. Alleluia. I want to be part of that, Pastor Sarah, too, just like you, to be part of your enthusiasm here. The Alleluia chorus. Thank you, choir. Welcome to all of you as we gather here on this high, holy day. The Easter resurrection is celebrated here today. Thank you for joining us here at St. Andrew Lutheran Church. Today, we are all winners. Sometimes, though, I wonder if we do win all the time. You know, the raffles that we involve ourselves in, or the door prizes. Oftentimes, do we? I remember once at a golf event, I walked away with a leaf blower. It didn't count on my score, thankfully. I would have walked away empty-handed if it had to do with my score. A meat raffle once, I met a friend for a beer and walked away with a steak. That's a really great thing. But I think oftentimes when it comes to contests or lotteries or raffles, what do we expect? We expect that the odds are not in our favor. We expect that someone else is going to win, and that this couldn't possibly be my lucky day. It'll probably be someone else's lucky day. This is the context for the Easter story, friends. We just have to go back 2 days to Good Friday, when we join into the hearts and the minds of the people who were around Jesus during the time of his crucifixion. Yes, his crucifixion and death, when they didn't feel as though things were on the upswing at all. The reverse is actually true. Mary Magdalene, there was profound disappointment in the air. There was resignation. There was grief in the air. Mary Magdalene was in part of that story. Joanna, Mary, mother of James, they had come for one final act of duty and devotion to Jesus, who had been part of their life, part of their the last 3 years of following him, the life, the encouragement. And now what was left was to anoint his dead body with burial spices. Peter was nowhere to be found, not until the end of our reading that Pastor Sarah read for us. He was gone. He had actually already denied Jesus 3 times, as the story says, and so he was in a hole somewhere. He was probably living with profound guilt. for having seen the loss of these great proportions. As the Bible tells us, at least at this stage of the game, that we had hoped that he would be the one who would redeem Israel. But no. Sometimes I think we might have a similar attitude about life, that nothing has a way of changing, that we don't see that there are opportunities, that life can have more to it than what we currently know and understand. We can look out, read our news feeds, and look out at the world to Ukraine or Gaza or Haiti or other places far away and near and close by and see that there are troubles that exist in our world. Politics this year in 2024, I'm just going to put my head in the sand and just ignore it and act like it will go away someday. At least that's how I feel. And just when we think we've seen it all, we have ships that are hitting bridges at the same time. And I guess we just wonder here on this day, on Easter Sunday, when we hear the promises of resurrection, we think back to the times in our lives when we too ourselves have been surrounded by the grief that we experience when we lose a loved one, and we stand at the grave of our loved one and wonder how joy could ever possibly return to our lives. It's kind of a dead end, if that's the way we want to be. A dead end, pun intended. What is God, though, friends? You were just super enthusiastic with me just a moment ago. But what does God do with dead ends? What does God do with people who are not included? What does God do with people who are outside of the fold? Does God turn away and say, that's enough? I've had it. That's too much for me. Yeah, they're my beloved children, but only to a point. Is that what God says on Easter Sunday of all Easter Sundays? Is that what we expect to hear on Easter Sunday? There is a great three-letter word. It's maybe not all that deeply theological for you here today, but God has something to say for us when we enter into these circumstances of life, because God has a really big but to share. A really big but. Not a deep theological word, but it's one that says there is the rest of the story. Just when you think our loved ones are gone, just when you think there's nothing else left, just when you wonder and when you can't quite see around the corner and wonder where life is going at this juncture or at that juncture, the Easter promise, this big but comes into phrase here, into focus, and says, here we are. God is saying, hold on just a moment. When we think that things are going to be the way that they're going to be, when we think that we have seen it all, when we think there are no surprises that can bring joy and hope again into our lives, we hear a but phrase, and we say the words this morning, Christ is risen. Say them with me one more time. Christ is risen. The disciples encountered two men at the tomb who said these wonderful words that are some of my favorites. Why do you look for the living in a cemetery? Why do you look for the living in the cemetery? You were told 3 days you will rise again, Jesus will rise again, but here you are looking for the living among the dead. Easter is God's way of showing us our future, friends. That is the truth. That is the God-honest truth. Easter is God's way of showing us our future. And it's really twofold. It has to do with God can take someone who is literally dead and make them alive again. But the other side of that as well is that God can take us in our own time and place, in our own circumstances, whatever it is that we are thinking about or wondering about or worrying about, and can, in our own time and place, surprise us and make us alive too, and might give us hope and peace and joy once again. Let me rewind the clock a bit with you and play the Do You Remember game with you. For instance, when you were younger, for those of you who are married, and before you'd met your spouse, do you remember what that was like? When you didn't really know what that would look like or what that would feel like, when you met someone with whom you could relate, and when they said, "Will you marry me?" you said yes. It's hard to see around the corner sometimes, but I believe that that's an Easter moment when we come to that point when we can see our future clearly. Back in the day before Michelle and I had Alex, Andrew, and Liam, we had this before understanding that, boy, what is it going to be like to have kids? And am I going to measure up? Is it, I know it's about dirty diapers and things like that, but I didn't know what to expect. But now we've watched them 25, 21, and 19 years old, and it is a blessing beyond measure that I didn't know early on what that would look or feel like. But that's an Easter thing for me, to see that kind of fulfillment in life. We all started working, and we didn't know what we would become. I myself literally was flicking burgers in Fargo, North Dakota. I didn't know that I'd be preaching on an Easter Sunday service at St. Andrew 35 years later. But Easter is a way of seeing our future, living into our future, finding where God is in our lives. And I've sat with many of you in my 10 years of being here when we've been in a moment in time where it's difficult and we don't know what's around the corner, what's around the edge. But maybe we can look back and we can see not just where we found our sense of self again and recovered, but I want us to think about how we see Easter playing shape in our lives, that God enters into our lives and says, you too can be alive and dynamic and growing again. This is the Easter of resurrection from the dead, but also can resurrect us as alive people in new and surprising ways. So when I think about the Easter that we are celebrating here at St. Andrew, it's 9 o'clock Easter Sunday morning. How many other Christians around the world are gathering in their churches? How many other different languages are they speaking to say Christ is risen indeed, alleluia? And how many centuries have gone by when we ourselves chime in here from our little corner at St. Andrew Lutheran Church in Eden Prairie? This heritage of ours is not something to be laughed at. There are billions and billions of people who say Christ is Lord and say that He is risen indeed, alleluia. You are caught up in that time. Maybe your origination story wasn't a cathedral like the former picture, but maybe it was a more rural setting, whatever it was. My own origination story comes from these 3 generations that you see on the screen of this resolution picture from the 1980s. You have my brother and me, my twin brother Eric and me moving into college, my dad in the middle with a Coca-Cola shirt on, and then Grandpa Pastor Elmer Johnson standing on the bumper of the moving truck there. There he is. But that's Pastor Elmer Johnson. When we eulogized my grandfather back in 1996, when he died at 99 years old, my father told the story about how when he was a young man, he went with Grandpa Elmer on a hospital call. And we walked down this long hospital corridor into a hospital room that was dark. Because hospital rooms, my friends, can be a time of life or death. And this room was dark. My father told the story in his eulogy. He walked over to the window, and my grandfather, Pastor Elmer, started opening up the blinds in the room and said the words of Easter and said the words for all of us, let's let a little bit of light in here. Easter beckons us to let the light of Christ shine in our lives. It's so critical for us in the lives when we sometimes would rather keep the blinds closed. But Elmer is my heritage. So is Ruth, my grandmother. So is my dad, David, and my mom, Mary Ann. It is my heritage that I inherited. And you, my friends, have a heritage also. I don't know who it is that told you how important Jesus was. I don't know who has encouraged you, or maybe it's your mother sitting with you. We're coming to church on Easter Sunday morning, rather like it or not. Here you are. We're here because it's important. We're here because Jesus loves us, and we need a little light in here in our lives today on Easter, but we need it every day along the line because we just need it. Not just on this day, but every day, because it is also, people of faith, our path to a future that has hope and peace in it. If you've been around these parts, you've seen pictures of my dogs before. This is Cooper. Cooper is our 3.5-year-old yellow lab. Many of you have dogs here as well. Cooper is a classic lab, has way too much energy. He's happiest when his people are around and with a ball, a stick, or a frisbee in his mouth. He's the best. He'll be excited to see me. He's always excited to see me, actually. But our typical activity, a few times a week, I hope, is to go on a run. Cooper's my running partner. And we have a track that we run in our neighborhood that's 3 miles. And I try to do it. I need to do it more, but I love doing it. Cooper is my companion, and it's a path that we do every time. I could close my eyes, and Cooper would lead me. I swear, he would lead me on the whole run to the end of our driveway because he knows that path so well. But there are times when I only can do a 2-miler. Or there are times when I could do a little bit longer. And so I have him tethered to my belt, and I have to pull him off and take him in another direction. And Cooper wants nothing of it. He's totally discombobulated. He looks up at me and says, "Are you sure we're supposed to go this way? We're not supposed to go that way." But I, as his master, will take him where he needs to go with me. Now, my point in telling the story about Cooper and me running is also a story about the Christian life. There are times when we think our lives are only going in one direction, and that it's a pattern and a routine that's not ever going to change. But Jesus is raised. Hope is born. Love exists for us in our world. And our master says, let's go this way. Let's go this way. It's a path. The Easter promise is a path. Let's go this way in the direction of love, in this direction of forgiveness, of salvation, and of joy. Come with me. My friends, on Easter Sunday of all Sundays, that's where we want to be. And if Christ is raised from the dead, and if Jesus is the one who says, "Come and follow me, and I will give you a new life," that is the promise of this day. Happy Easter. Thanks be to God. Amen. Thank you for listening to this worship podcast of St. Andrew Lutheran Church. We hope that this recording provides you with a moment of God's grace wherever this finds you. Any contribution you make to St. Andrew will bolster our ministry and outreach, including our podcasting directly to you. You can do so online. Thank you for joining us for this podcast, and I wish you every blessing from Christ today.